What the hell happened here?
Okay.
Welcome everyone to Dead Talk Live. I'm your host Viz, and it is my honor tonight to welcome a horror legend, Barbara Crampton, to us. Barbara, thank you so much for agreeing to be on our show. How are you doing tonight?
Pretty good. Yeah, all things considering, we're kind of all in this together.
Yes, we are.
So, yeah,
Yes,
hanging
we
in
are.
there.
Yes, we are. And I'm glad you're doing well. Again, thank you so much for being here with us. And I want to get started right away. I want to talk about this new movie that you have coming out at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the month. Last week, I played the trailer for our audience, and it's a Lovecraftian adaptation called Sacrifice. What can you tell us about it?
Well, it's kind of got a Wicker Man feel to it. There's an island, and there's a cult that lives on the island, and the couple, the two people that come to our island on a boat, the husband was born there, and he hasn't been back to the island since he left with his mother many years ago when something horrible happened that he doesn't remember. So when he comes back, we get to find out what happened, why he's come back, and who has to be sacrificed. Yeah.
I know. Do you play the mother of the man or?
No, I don't play the mother. I
Okay.
play, it's Norwegian, and
Mm-hmm.
so they call me a lensman, which is another word for sheriff. So I'm like the constable. I'm like the police officer of the island, and more. Actually, I have some secrets of my own.
That's awesome. How does it was it shot on location or was it
Mhm.
shot here in the US?
It was shot in Norway,
Wow.
and I'd never been there before. It was absolutely gorgeous with the fjords and the water and the mountains and everything. It was just amazing. Yeah, I was there 2 summers ago for about a month and a half.
And from what I read, it's going to theaters and video on demand.
Yeah, and I think it's actually not the end of this month, but it's February 9th. And I don't know what theaters it's going to be playing in.
Yeah.
I feel like with the opening and closing of the schools and restaurants and things like that, it sort of changes depending on what's happening. So I think we'll see.
Yeah.
Um,
What they're
you
saying
know,
officially is limited theater. Yeah.
limited theater.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So we just gotta
depending
wait and
on,
see.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, so let's go now further back. You've been in the horror industry now for over going on well over 35 years. What do you think about the evolution of horror from the mid to early 80s to doing sacrifice? I mean,
Well,
you have
that's a
seen
big
so many
question, Biz.
changes.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge question. I mean, there's been some changes in regards to the way we put movies together now, the stories that we tell, how easy it is for people to make movies at this point in time. So that's a big question. I would say in terms of content, I really feel like the horror audience has gotten a lot more sophisticated in the last number of years. And whereas in the 80s, when I feel like that was sort of the heyday of horror movies, the golden age in a way, um, we told a lot of stories with a lot of horror tropes. And those tropes became embedded in our mental
Hmm.
capacity for looking at stories and how to tell stories. So, we had tropes like, we had jump scares, we had the killer in the woods, we had a killer in a cabin, we had a vengeful spirit, we have, all these different kinds of tropes to tell a story, a masked murderer. I think the stories have gotten more sophisticated. We still have those tropes, but we don't rely on them as much to tell our stories. So I think in that way, horror has changed and gotten more sophisticated when you look at what Jordan Peele did with Get Out. And,
Hmm.
horror has always tried to identify with what's going on in our culture and politically and things like that. But it's really deepened, I'd say, in the last number of years. Also, I feel like today it's easier to make a movie and
Yeah.
anybody can do it. You figure out the software and
Hmm.
you can edit at home. So I see a lot more people jumping out of their lane than what we did in the 80s. For instance, I was just an actress in the 80s, not just an actress, but an actress. And I worked with Stuart Gordon a lot, who was a director. But today I feel like, and you showed a clip of Your Next there. When I worked on Your Next, I saw that the people I was working with on that movie were directing, they were producing, they were acting, they were writing, they were editing, they were doing everything. And when I came back after taking a break for a number of years with Your Next, I was really mesmerized by all these people that I was working with because they were doing it all and they are doing it all. And so I feel like that's opened things up a lot for a lot of people and given people more opportunities in a way.
That's true. That's absolutely true. So, what was your reaction when you first got the script to Re-Animator? Did you know that? Did you have a feeling it was going to become such a cult classic?
I get asked that all the time, and I wish I had a better story for you. But really, it was a job, and I was an actress, and I didn't feel like I want to be in a horror movie. And oh, isn't this a cool script? I was aware of the horror genre, as I'm aware of all the genres, but I had been working in soap operas and did a little bit of TV and things like that, and it didn't occur to me that I was going to become part of a cult classic that was going to last for 35 years or more. I didn't think that. I did think that the script was funny. I thought that my character was a good character.
Hmm.
And I loved the character of Herbert West. And I really liked the dynamic of the relationship I had with Bruce Abbott as my boyfriend. And when I auditioned for that part of Meg and Halsey, those guys had already had their roles.
Hmm.
They had won the roles. My part had already been cast with someone else.
Oh,
And then her mother read the script and said, "Oh, no, no, you're not doing this movie." So they had to have another casting session. So I was brought in to read with those guys. And I remember reading with them and thinking, wow, these actors are so good. I hope they get the parts because I didn't know they already had the parts. Um, and I was there for maybe 3 hours. I kept being asked to go back into the lobby and prepare another scene and come back in. And then Stuart Gordon came from the theater, so he was really liked to work with us a lot. And he gave us some adjustments and direction. And then he'd say, okay, go out and work on that and then come back in. So I was really like working the scenes with the guys in the lobby and then would go back in and do the scenes with them again. And here I am.
well, that's a great story. Would you say that Re-Animator was the big game changer in your career?
I think so, but it only over time because when that movie came out, people like Roger Ebert and Pauline Kael and really very well-regarded journalists and reviewers thought very highly of the movie, but it didn't really change my life until over time
Hmm.
I became embedded with the horror genre and Re-Animator became a cult classic and more people discovered it and realized that it really was the seminal film of Stuart Gordon. So I feel like over time it has affected my career and I didn't notice it in the moment. It wasn't like a blockbuster hit. Everybody liked the movie,
Hmm.
but I feel like it's changed now. But liking horror movies in the 80s was like a dirty little secret, and it's really not like that anymore. So it took a while for the effect of being part of that movie, to catch up with me, I think.
Yeah, and the great Stuart Gordon, who just passed away in this last year, he was a legend. Now, You're Next, in our opinion, is one of like the most underrated horror movies of all time, and I believe
It's underrated? Is it
Yes,
underrated?
yeah,
Yeah.
it birthed such films as The Strangers and The Purge. In my opinion, what attracted you to taking on that role?
Well, let's see. Again, I do think The Strangers, though, I think The Strangers and Your Next were filmed around the same time. So I don't know if we wanted say that The Strangers took from us. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know. But our movie, when we made You're Next, it got put on a shelf for, this is a side story, but I'll tell you about,
Absolutely.
working in it before. But we shot the film, and then it was picked up by Lionsgate, and then Lionsgate acquired Summit Entertainment. So after the movie premiered at the Toronto Film Festival, it took them another 2 years to put the movie out. So in that time, I think The Strangers was released before us, and then our movie came out. So people do talk about The Strangers and You're Next sort of in the same conversations, but I don't think anybody took from either of those. I would say there's other movies that potentially, like maybe The Purge, I don't know, took from that. I don't know. I mean, there's little kernels of ideas in every movie that you go, oh, that was really cool in that movie. Let's expand on that. So maybe. But anyway, to get back to your question, I had sort of retired from the business in my late 30s, got married, had some children, and moved from Los Angeles to San Francisco. And my kids were really little at the time. And my agent, who I hadn't spoken to in, I'd say, 6 years, called me and said, I have an offer for you for this movie called You're Next. And it's with some independent producers and a young up-and-coming director. And, would you like to read it? And I said, you have an offer? And they said, and my agent said, yeah. My guys in set said, yeah. And I said, well, don't they want to meet me or talk to me or whatever? I mean, how old are my kids? And he said, no, they're just offering you the film. And I thought that was really odd because I hadn't been working in so many years. It just really felt like it came out of the blue. Apparently, Stuart Gordon had gone down to Texas to Fantastic Fest and was there with Jeffrey Combs, and they did a screening of Re-Animator, and Simon Barrett was in the audience, and he was the writer of You're Next, and he talked to Stuart, and he said, I was thinking about Barbara Crampton for a role in this movie that I'm doing. What's she up to? And Stuart said, she's retired, and she's married, and she's not working anymore. And he said, oh, okay, but thank God Simon called my agent, and they asked me anyway, because they could have asked anybody.
Exactly.
They could have asked Felissa Rose. They could have asked Caroline Williams. They could have asked anybody. And they asked me, and I read the script, and I thought it was really well written and really fun. And I thought, well, this will be great because motherhood is really hard and acting is really fun. So this would be a fun little diversion for me. So 10 days later, I was on a plane to Missouri, and I'm telling you, working with those really dynamic, very smart, really fun people like Joe Swanberg and Amy Seimetz and Ty West and Adam Wingard and Keith Calder, who was the producer, and Jessica Wu. They're doing huge movies now. I think I was part of a movie that was really at a point in all of those people's careers before they really, really took off. And I feel so grateful to have been asked to be a part of that movie. And I thought the movie was fantastic. So I think it was just lucky. I think I just got lucky that they asked me to do it. So then I realized how fun it was, really, and how much more I wanted to do in the acting field and come back into the industry. So that was the beginning of my second round of my career.
Yeah. So you had no plans of coming back into the field, and the movie brought
really.
you back and reinvigorated your passion for the craft and brought you out of retirement as well.
It really did. And let me tell you, Viz, it happened at a time, as I say, in my late 30s when, for a lot of women, I just felt like I wasn't getting parts anyway. So, when I was in my early 20s, I had a lot of roles and I would have a lot of auditions for things. And then in my late 30s, I just wasn't getting a lot of stuff. So when my husband said, I'm transferred with my job and I'd like to move to San Francisco, it'd be great for my career, I didn't hesitate. I said, oh, yeah, sure, we'll just go there, really never thinking I was going to come back to the business at all. And I thought, well, I had a soap career. I did Re-Animator, I did From Beyond, I did a few good movies. So, maybe that's enough and that's it. And this has all been a grand surprise for me for the last 10 years being back and just,
It's still very
keeping
active.
working. Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe I passed a certain age group or certain point in my career where, there wasn't as many roles for women in their late 30s. And now I'm playing, the evil stepmother and, the compromised older woman and the scientist. And
Cult
although I played a
leader.
scientist in From Beyond, the cult leader,
Yeah,
thank you, the cult leader. So I don't know. I don't know what's happening. I'm just having a really good time.
that's awesome. Recently, we had a guest, Ronan Rubinstein. He played in a movie recently where he was being stalked from an unknown group for an unknown reason. Uh, from an actor's
What
point of
movie
view,
was that?
the movie is called Smiley Face Killers.
Okay.
Okay, it
I
just
didn't
came
see it.
out early November, I believe. Uh, on a terrifying meter, just that concept of being in a movie where you're being stalked by an unknown
Mhm.
group of people for no obvious motive. How scary is that?
That's very scary. And I actually was thinking about this last night. There's a show on Sunday nights, I think it's on MSNBC, where they profile killers and then
Hmm.
I don't know the name of the show, but then they interview people in connection with the death, be it the police officers or the investigators and the family. And the other night I mean, this is real life, but I was watching this show on Sunday night, and it was about this killer who was stalking people in the woods. There's a killer in the woods. There are lots of killers in the woods. It's not just in a movie. And terrible stories about this older couple that were really seasoned hikers, and they were killed by this man, and then this other woman who was befriended him, and they were going on a hike together, and then he turned on her after 3 days,
Yeah.
and he killed her. And I go on hikes very often. So today, in fact, I came home and I told my husband I went on this hike up this mountain called Ring Mountain, which is outside San Francisco, and I love this hike. It's about a mile and a half all the way up to the top. And on the weekends, there's plenty of people there. But during the week, like today, I saw 3 people.
Mm.
And it made me think I really shouldn't, as a woman, I really shouldn't be hiking alone, I don't know, really kind of freaked me out. So to answer your question, yeah, thinking about, because there's been plenty of times where there's been an unknown entity or something horrible or a vengeful spirit or something like that. Not that I've been part of movies where, I've definitely been the victim in a few movies, but you have to try to identify with those feelings as much as you can and play them realistically. So now when I think if I ever have another one of those parts, I can think about climbing up Ring Mountain and the feeling that I got, and you use things from your own environment. So even just sitting there watching the television and watching the profiles of what was going on with these people and how they died so horribly and tragically, it affects me. Definitely affects me,
Oh
and I
yeah,
can recall those feelings and that
absolutely.
fear. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, you have been in many subgenres in the main horror genre, slasher flicks. Reanimator is its own genre. Let's leave it at that. Is
Is it
there?
comedy? Is it horror? I don't know.
Yeah,
Sometimes,
are they
I don't.
zombies? Are they not
Right.
zombies?
Is it a zombie flick? I get asked that a lot, and
Yeah.
my answer to that would be yes,
Mm-hmm.
it is.
Because.
Um, but it's not considered a comedy horror
Mm-mm.
in the traditional sense, but it has comedic elements.
Oh
And
yeah.
is it scary? I don't know if it's really scary. I don't know.
Well, that
Um,
leads me to my
that's hard for me to say.
that leads me to my next question. We know it's different when you're acting in a movie, filming scenes, and so on. Watching the finished product, what subgenre in the horror realm actually scares you as a person? You know,
Hmm.
your own. Like for
Yeah.
me, zombies don't scare me. The
Right.
paranormal
Right.
scares me
Yeah.
because I
I
believe in
think
it.
so. I agree. I agree with you there. I think anything that has a possession,
Hmm.
like The Exorcist really scared me. That was the first horror movie I ever saw in my entire life.
Wow.
I was 13 or 15 years old, and I saw it on a Saturday with my girlfriends, and we all walked to the theater. And then I think we were seeing a 4 o'clock show or something. But by the time the movie was over, it was going to be dark, and I lived at the farthest away. And I remember I had to leave the theater. I didn't finish watching the movie because I thought I'm not going to be able to walk home
You're not alone.
by myself, even for a short amount of time. So it took me another few years before I saw the entirety
The,
of The Exorcist. But even movies like The Entity. I mean, I've seen that movie once. I don't think I can watch it again. Movies about possession and spirits. Those I think those are the things that are so scary because everybody can relate to that because it really is something out of your control. Like you think if a zombie's chasing you, well, there really aren't zombies, so you probably don't have to be too afraid. But something with the paranormal or something that is a spirit or the creep factor, that feels like it could be real. We've all been creeped out. We've
uh-huh.
all thought we
Absolutely.
heard something or sensed something. And, I think everybody can relate to that. And I think that subgenre of horror is the one that is probably the hardest to do in a way, to make it really believable, but probably one of the more scary ones.
Are there any films that you starred into when you saw the finished product actually did kind of freak you out and scare you a little bit? Or having been in it, was like, I know what happened. It's no, it's did not have the same effect on you.
I think after you make a movie, you really look at it from a technical point of view. And I'm watching to see if the things are landing, the movies that I'm in, if
Hmm.
that if that moment in that scene is really doing what it's supposed to do in that moment. I do think that I'm much more scared, and I know it's coming. I know it's coming. I know it's going to happen. But I think that movies that I'm not in scare me.
Hmm.
So I'm a very good audience. I get really scared during movies, and I enjoy that.
Oh yeah.
What was the scariest movie I've seen recently was, and I want to get this right. Um, it was Terrified. It was a
I've s-
Spanish language film.
I think I've seen that. I like to
Yeah.
watch a lot of independent horror films.
Mhm, mhm.
I think you find some really precious gems that are not really marketed, and there are some great storytelling in them.
Yeah. Well, let me say, I mean, there's just so much product out there too.
Hmm.
And it is about the marketing too. I think the budget for the marketing for your next was $20 million or something. So
Wow.
if you want people to know that your film is out there, you have to spend money to get it out there. Um, so, thing like Blumhouse has a very big infrastructure, and when a new Blumhouse movie comes out, and
Hmm.
they've built up their reputation, and they have a very good reputation over the past number of years. But, for some of the smaller companies like Dark Sky or like, what are some other really small companies? Um,
Oh, there's so many production companies out there
you know,
nowadays.
but but even the distribution arm of some of
Hmm.
these smaller distributors that even Epic Pictures is releasing Sacrifice. I mean, they're a very small company, so right now they rely on the horror fan to find those movies. They rely on me as an actor in the film to tell my fans and to tell people on my social media, hey, watch this movie. It's pretty darn good, and some of those things will naturally tumbleweed into more and more people knowing about it, but it does take word of mouth
You
sometimes,
know,
you know.
I had this conversation with my audience like last week, and I really believe that studios and distribution companies Don't know where to go right now with the current pandemic and how movies are being released. You know, some are going to the movies, mostly are going to video on demand, and they don't know how to market them.
Mm.
Before it was simple. A movie would come out to the theater, you'd spend money on commercials and so on for the theatrical release, and then it would get released to DVD, Blu-ray, and video on demand.
Yeah.
With
Hmm.
now everything, being split, coming out on video on demand the same day it might come out in some movies. I think a lot of great movies, and there's a great one that came out recently called The Dark and the Wicked.
Yeah,
uh,
I saw that. Yeah, that
Xander
was really
Berkeley
scary.
is in it, Michael
Yeah.
Abbott Jr. Really
Hmm.
scary, but
Really
got
scary. Yeah.
absolutely no marketing whatsoever.
Well, I think that is a case of, again, word of mouth, because I think it's very well regarded. It came out to really good reviews, and I think that's a movie over time that is going to find its audience and is
Hmm.
going to find its devoted fans. Um, yeah, it's like movies. Movies are like people, they have a life to them and they mature. And I do think that what you're saying is correct, but I also think that over time, the movies that are really good will stand the test of time, and people will revisit them, and then they will become, hopefully, have
Yeah.
have a cult following. I know that when we did Chopping Mall, for instance, which
Hmm.
is a silly kind of fun. I love the movie, but it's a silly horror comedy. It came out and it was all right. People liked it, but it's really developed a fan following over many, many, many years.
Yeah.
And people are still discovering that movie.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's true. That's absolutely true. I got to say, Barbara, it is absolutely refreshing to talk to someone who's a part of the horror genre, but I can totally tell you are a fan
I
of
am a
horror.
fan, yeah.
You
And
are.
and it came over time. Again, I wasn't like a lot of, people that I meet at conventions. I see people with their kids, and the kids are 11 years old and they're watched, all the Friday the 13th movies already, or the parents say I've been a fan since I was a kid and I've shown my kids all this movie. I wasn't a fan of I think I was a fan of the genre, but I didn't really know it. It wasn't in my consciousness. I grew up watching Dark Shadows, Night Gallery, The Outer Limits, all of that kind of stuff, The Twilight Zone, and I loved it, but I just liked storytelling. I didn't think, oh, this is the genre that I love the most. And it wasn't until I started working in it that I realized the value that we have in telling these horror stories and
Hmm.
how deep they go, because they really go deep. I mean,
They
horror
do.
movies are about empathy and about the deepness of one's soul, and the fear and the love and the longing and the loss that they have. And there's no end to the stories that we can tell in the horror genre. So I am a big fan, and I've just become a fan really over time.
Well, that's very refreshing. Now, let's go. You got your start in soaps, is that correct?
Yeah, I think my first job was on Days of Our Lives. And yeah.
You've appeared in numerous soaps. Now, how hard is it for someone who gets in the door of soap operas to make the transition into primetime television or film?
At that time, and maybe even now, if you stay in it for too long, I mean, you get pigeonholed in any genre. So when you're a soap actor, people think, oh, that's what you do. You do soaps. But I was on Young and the Rest. I was on, Days of Our Lives for a year. Then I did a movie with Brian De Palma, and then I did Re-Animator, and then I did Chopping Mall, and then I did From Beyond. Then I went to The Young and the Restless for 6 years.
Yes.
And that was a very long period of my career. And I remember when I was about 27 years old being on that show. I was only supposed to be a 13-week character, and they just kept asking me to stay longer and longer. So after 2 or 3 years, I remember they offered me another contract. And I thought at the time, you know, if I continue to do this work on The Young and the Restless, it may hurt my movie career. It may hurt my primetime TV
Mm-hmm.
career, which I had very little, but I had done some things. And the other side of the coin was that it was a job and they're going to pay me to do what I loved. And I'm a practical person. So I said yes. And I remained on that show for 6 years and knowing full well that it might hurt me for the future. But I don't know, it didn't seem to. And it's clearly it hasn't now. So I guess that was the right decision at the time. But I really enjoyed doing that show and doing all the soap roles I did. It's, you're working, you're like a family, and
Being that it's a daily show, how different is it from shooting a once a week show or a movie? I mean,
Mhm.
you're there every day, and it's
Yes and no, because it depends on your storyline. So, for instance, I might go through a couple of weeks where I might work 5 days a week, but rarely. Usually, if you're a character on a soap or an actor on a soap, you'll work 2 to 3 days a week. And you have a lot of time off, so that's great. You have a lot of time off to learn your lines because there's a lot of lines, so you need that time. Um, yeah, it was great because you get to know that character so well, and you're also working so fast, you don't have time to think about it. So I feel like it was a workout for me as an actor because I can learn lines very quickly and I'll try things and make choices and I'll just throw some stuff out there because of my training on a soap. You don't have time to think about that.
mm-hmm.
Here's your dialogue. Here's where you're going to move. You show up every morning. If your watchers and listeners want to know a little bit about this, but you come in the morning and you have your dialogue and the director tells you where you're going to move
Mm-hmm.
for during each line because there's 3 cameras. It's like a dollhouse. So there's 3 walls and then there's 3 cameras on the 4th wall, and they have to know when they're going to turn. They're editing as they go, so they have to know when they're going to turn the light on and for which moment. So you have to move on the word, not even on the line, on the word that they want you to move on. So it's very exacting, and I would run the lines with my fellow actors in the makeup room, and then we'd go out and do 1 camera rehearsal, and then you just shoot it, and that's it. And maybe you do a little pickup, maybe you'd have a chance to do it again if it was a difficult scene, but that's it. I mean, you're just banging it out. It's 80 pages a day.
Wow.
So you better be prepared.
You're damn right. Sounds like you better be prepared. Now, how do you feel the woman's role in, let's take horror movies, has changed over the decades? Has it changed in a positive direction? Come on, the 80s, Friday the 13th, Halloween, the camper, counselor, slasher, genre. There would always be the last person standing, and there would more than always be a woman hero, the one you never thought would be the survivor. As opposed to today. So how do you feel, in your opinion, how has the woman's role changed in acting in regards to horror movies?
Well, the nice thing about the early days of horror is that we really were afforded a lot of really great roles because we had the final girl.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have the final girl in a comedy. No. We didn't have the final girl in a drama. A lot of stories in the early days were written by men, and they men wrote what they wanted to see, and for some reason in the horror genre, it's the woman looks more like she is vulnerable and either needs to be saved or will seek vengeance or be able to fight against something horrible and come out on the other side. So you want to see that vulnerability versus the strength at the end, and what better way to do that with a female horror star? So Jamie Lee Curtis and some of the other early ladies in horror, even in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you got to see a woman screaming for her life or running for her life, but also remaining alive.
Yeah.
And that's satisfying for a viewer. I feel like, so I want to applaud our genre for giving great roles to horror women, to women. But now I do see that roles for women have deepened in another way, that we're not just, the bubble-headed co-ed screaming for her life and having, other people having to save her. Although I do feel with Stuart Gordon, he gave me very strong roles, but a lot of it has just given away to better storytelling and
I feel
layers.
women are much more empowered in today's horror movies.
Maybe we're empowered, but I feel like we were somewhat empowered, even though they have the term that people coin the scream queen, and it sort of belies what to me it doesn't really, it's not really referencing the capabilities that women had to do even in the early 80s. So I want to say again, I really think that the horror genre has given women a lot of good roles from the very beginning to now. But there is something, and I think you're touching on that women seem more capable in a way now than they did maybe in the 80s. But I think that has to do with the storytelling and the way that screenplays are written now and the sophistication of the audience and what they want to see.
That is totally true. Speaking of scream queens, you're like in the top 10 of IMDb's list of all-time scream queens, right?
I didn't know that, but I see my name floated around on different lists here and there.
I don't know if it's a top 5 or top 10, but you're in the top
Okay.
you're near the top of the list.
I'm in there somewhere.
What was it like receiving the Horror Channel Lifetime Achievement Award at Grimmfest in 2018?
Yeah. It was great. I've gotten a few awards over the years at the Sitges Film Festival and at Grimmfest and at Morbido in Mexico. Since coming back into the genre with Your Next, I feel like people have really embraced me and given me more opportunities as an actor. Now I'm producing a little bit as well, but I feel really grateful that people are giving me opportunities to act and giving me the opportunity in a way to try and become an ambassador for our genre and to speak for women and to speak on behalf of other people in our genre and to promote our genre and to celebrate it. And I feel like since I came back, I've discovered that there's film festivals all over the world, and I've been invited to go to some of them. And that's been very gratifying for me to go to a lot of these film festivals and meet fans from all over the world and meet filmmakers from all over the world as well. And see where different tastes lie, depending on the culture. That's been really exciting and interesting. So I just feel really, I'm in the right place, and I've rededicated myself to the horror genre, and I just feel grateful to be here.
As recent, do you go to, before the coronavirus, would go to a lot of these horror conventions, and how do you enjoy meeting fans face to face?
I go to some conventions. I don't go to as many as a lot of people do, only because I'm still was staying home to kind of hang out with my family a lot and working. But my daughter is graduating high school this year. And so I'll be an empty. Thank you. I have a son in college, his first year of college. And my husband and I will be empty nesters, and then I'll feel like I can travel a little bit more. My husband also works really hard and really long hours, so I just didn't want to leave them on the weekends very much,
I'm not too far behind you. I've got a freshman in college. I've got a junior, and a freshman in high school. So.
Oh yeah, there you go.
There you go. 3 teenagers. Oh my God. Yeah. Teens.
Oh my God. Boy, are they boys or girls?
My oldest is a girl, and the other two are boys.
Oh, great. That's
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. So anyway, I'm sorry we got off track there for a
No, just
second.
about going to conventions. So I do go to conventions. I probably go to two or three a year, maybe, and film festivals because that's another way films have changed over the years. When you make these independent movies, you don't often have a distribution deal in place, so you have to try to sell the movie. So how do you do that?
Yeah.
You go to all these different film festivals, submit to film festivals, hopefully get into a really good one, and then people from different distribution companies will see it, or they will see the reviews come out, and then they'll ask to watch the movie and hopefully buy the film. So it's really important if you're working in independent horror movies today to try and travel to some of these film festivals to try and do your own marketing.
And at the
You
end
know,
of the
the film.
day, those film festivals, it really is a competition, right? To win the awards and hopefully
Yeah.
get your piece picked
Hmm.
up. Now,
Sure.
when in your life did you realize that you wanted to be an actress?
Well, that came when I was probably about 11 or so.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I used to come home on the East Coast and watch the $1 Million Movie that came on at 4 o'clock every day. And I was watching movies with Miriam Hopkins and Betty Davis and Danny Kaye. Those were the people that I really looked up to, that I loved. Miriam Hopkins was my favorite actress at the time that I was really little. At that time, really funny enough, I was also coming home to watch Dark Shadows.
I remember
And
that.
that was one of my favorite shows.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that was the sign of something to come. I don't know. But I wanted to be an actress from very early on. So when I was in high school, I did little plays in high school. And then I graduated from high school and went to a school very close to my home and studied theater. And I thought, well, maybe I'll do theater. Maybe I'll get into theater. I wasn't really sure how I was going to make my acting career happen or what that actually meant. But right after, well, during college, I actually lived in New York City a few different summers and did some plays in New York
Mm-hmm.
and then realized that if you're working in the theater, you're not getting paid as much money
Oh yeah.
as if you're working in films at the time. And actually, at the time, 35 years ago, when I started acting in movies, I was paid a lot more money then, for these lower independent movies because there wasn't as much product, there wasn't as many people wanting to do them, there wasn't as many actors. So, the margins for things like salaries has really shrunk a bit. But I really thought to move to Los Angeles because I wanted to work in movies because I thought if I want to be an actor, I have to feed myself and I have to make money. So
Mm-hmm.
I thought I better get into movies and television.
Now, speaking of movies and television, do you have a preference? Whether it's TV over film? Do you enjoy one more than the other?
Hmm. No, not necessarily. I mean, I love movies so much, and I love the whole. Now that I'm doing some producing, I love the development process of working on a script and kind of bringing a director that would match the material. But there is something nice about the television and the infrastructure being there, and you just kind of show up and it's already there, and
Yeah.
you just come in, and it seems easier in a way. You're with a movie, you're reinventing the wheel every single time. But recently, I was able and fortunate enough to do an episode of Channel Zero and also of Creep Show with your friend Greg
Greg
Nicotero.
Nicotero.
So that was really nice for me to come into a couple different shows that everything was just set up, that they had the same DP for all the episodes, the same people doing hair and makeup, and there was a shorthand between the producers and the director and everybody who worked on the crew. So it was just it was easy for me to come in and just do my acting job on both of those shows. I really loved that. Um, I didn't have to think about everything else, in the creative process. I just had to think about my little part. So I really, really loved doing that. But, I just want to do more things, and I would love to work in more television, and I would love to continue to do movies. I can't say I love one more than the other. I just really like it all. I just really like storytelling.
That sounds totally reasonable. Now, back in the 80s, even the 90s, special effect makeup people were very prominent.
Hmm.
Now we know a lot of the stuff is done by CGI. Was there anybody that you worked with, like a Tom Savini, for example, that
Yeah, I never
you
worked with
real
Tom. Yeah.
you really like? I don't know what the right word is. Gained a new respect for their craft after seeing them in action.
Yeah. Well, when I did the original Castle Freak,
Hmm.
um, and we worked on that, and I'm going to have to look up his name because now we're talking and I'm looking it up on my phone. But let me just tell you who this is because he died a couple of years ago. You, all your listeners are saying, "Yeah, I know who she's talking about." John Vulich did the
Okay,
makeup for the Freak,
the freak, yeah.
and that was all practical makeup.
Hmm.
Really, I haven't worked with that much CGI stuff.
Right.
Little bits and pieces, even in new movies that I've done. But back then, we had nothing, none of that capability. When Jonathan Fuller would get in the chair every morning for the original Castle Freak, it was 5 or 6 hours to apply his makeup,
Wow.
and there was no real appliances or anything. It was really crafted every single day, and it was beautiful makeup. I and when I saw that, I mean, I was mesmerized by that makeup, and also mesmerized by his performance in that film.
Hmm.
And I think it was probably on that film that I gained a very high respect, you know, for,
For
for what was going on.
for the
Yeah.
special effects people. Uh,
Yeah.
Now you said you took a break in your late 30s, stepped away from acting, uh, because you said the roles were not there. Did you get any kind of
Mhm.
pushback for? Because you didn't give up, you just stepped away. But did anybody ever accuse you of giving up on the industry? Did you get any kind of pushback at all?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't recall that I would have or did. Um, I think a lot of people want, I mean, it is a field that you can do for a long time. I mean, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of a lot of jobs and careers when people reach 65 or now 70, that's it,
Mm-hmm.
you can't really do it anymore. But as far as being an actor, I think you can do that. I want to be the Betty White of horror. I would want to stick around as long as I can. So I'm in it for the long haul. I want to be the grandma. Um, yeah, I think most of the time when you don't see people anymore, and I look people up all the time on IMDb when I watch movies, like, oh, whatever happened to that person or
I
that
do
person,
that too. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And I
yeah.
look them up. That's one of my favorite apps on my phone is my IMDb.
Mm-hmm.
So I look people up and I think, oh, they haven't worked in a few years, and I always think it's because people hadn't called them. They're not calling them, and it makes me sad, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
because and who are those people that continue on and stay on? I really only left the business because people weren't calling me. So that what could I do? Maybe if I had stayed in LA when my kids were really little, maybe I would have gotten that audition that would have changed my life, again at that point in my career. But I just wasn't really making any money. So I
Yeah.
thought,
But you
well,
have such a successful career going. I mean, you're still going
well,
strong.
well, what it makes me realize. this is that when you're an actor or when you work in the movie business, it's really the long haul.
Hmm.
Because I've had many points in my career when there's been lulls,
Hmm.
smaller lulls, maybe than 6 years when I was not active. But I tell people this all the time because everybody gets frustrated and they think I haven't made a movie for a year or two. I haven't done anything. People who work in the business, behind the scenes and in front of the camera. And and I think you have to just allow yourself to have those lulls and do whatever you need to do and make money some other way and
Hmm.
just, keep at it and just wait for those opportunities and the magic spark to happen again where somebody's going to ask you, to be a part of their new project and just keep working with your friends and keep trying to be creative. And you never know when your break is going to come, you know?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
We all know that the entertainment industry is just full of rejection. Mostly it's all rejection. And you're just waiting for that big break to happen, like you just said.
Yeah, well, it's not, it's not like it's not a regular job
Mm-mm.
because it's a new job every every time. You get a
Exactly.
job for a month or two, and then unless you get on a TV show
Hmm.
as an actor, or if you're working behind the scenes, if you get on a TV show, that's great for a lot of people. Like The Walking Dead did so well and was on for so many years, and who knew that was going to happen? And
Yeah.
it really enables people to, being practical again, put some money in the bank and then feel like, oh, I have a foundation now and I can go off and be creative and try to do other things. I worked on a movie recently with Matthew Gray Gubler
Hmm.
called King Knight, who's, I don't know when that's going to come out, but it's done and I've seen it and it's really great. And Matthew Gray Gubler was on Criminal Minds as
Love
a
that show.
young person for many years. And now he's trying to produce and he's trying to do his own projects. And, he's made enough money where he feels like he could do that now. And
I think he's the one person that's been on Criminal Minds from the whole 15 years.
mhm,
You're talking about Matt, right? Spencer. He
mhm,
played Spencer from
yeah,
season one all the way through to
yeah,
season 15.
yeah.
You know,
So he grew up on the show.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Looking back on your career, is there any project that stands out where you had the most fun in? You had the best fun making?
Oh, probably From Beyond. I don't want to diss the other projects because I have fun on every single movie I'm on. But I feel like From Beyond came at a time when maybe there weren't a lot of really deep roles for women, although, Sigourney Weaver came out with Aliens around
Hmm.
that time, Linda Hamilton did Terminator. But those were the anomalies because I just feel like, the leading roles for women weren't really there at that time. And that particular role of Catherine McMichaels in From Beyond was such a multidimensional role for me, and I got to do so many different things in the space of one movie and I went to Italy, and that was my first time in Italy, and got to make a movie in Italy. So it was really fun, and worked with all these wonderful Italian people, and that was exciting for me after doing Re-Animator. And I was one of the leads in Re-Animator, but in From Beyond I really felt like that movie was very much about my character.
Yeah.
And I was the driving force in the film. And I feel like Stewart gave me a very big gift in giving me that role.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine all the wonderful people you have met and all the friends you have made in 30 plus years in
Mhm.
filmmaking. Which directors do you enjoy working with the most?
Oh, I mean, I have to say Stewart is, he gave me my career, so he's
Hmm.
my number one. I wouldn't be talking to you today if I wasn't in Re-Animator.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have been in From Beyond if I wasn't in Re-Animator. So where would I be,
exactly. I mean, would you think here we are 35 years later still talking about Re-Animator? I mean, when you were making the film, did you have any
No,
idea?
No, it's crazy to think about it. It was crazy making it. We had fun making it. We didn't know what we were doing. I just think there was a little bit of that magic that happened, you know? It
I,
was like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They
yeah,
talk about that, you know? It's like the director and the actors at the time and the script and just how it came at the right time and just really found an audience, you know? When it
absolutely.
first came out, it it was a surprise. There's a little bit of magic with certain movies. I feel like some movies it is an uphill battle for people to get people to watch something and then they go, oh, that was good. Um, but then there's some movies that have this little bit of pixie dust and they create something that just makes people really stand up and listen and watch. And Host did that this year. Did you see Host?
Oh
That was on
yeah,
Shudder.
yes, yeah.
That came at the right time. Those actors were great. The director was fantastic,
Oh yeah.
right? The story.
I have a funny story about Host. Okay, I had
Yeah.
seen it. My brother, who's my executive producer, was down from New York visiting me. Okay, so I'm like, listen, I'm gonna make you watch this movie, Host. As we know, the movie's less than an hour long. Okay,
Yeah.
but it's
Some people
great.
call it a short.
Yeah,
I,
yeah, but it was great. And as it was
yeah.
getting towards the end, I'm a horrible person to watch a movie with. I can't keep my mouth shut. I go to him, you're gay, brace yourself. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And then that surprise ending happened, and I screamed like a 5 year old child. And he was sitting next to me. He thought I was doing it on purpose because I had already seen the movie. No, I knew the jump scare was coming,
Yeah.
but it
He still
had
got you.
frightened me so much. I yelled so loudly, and we just both got a big laugh out of that.
Yeah.
But it's a perfect example. Host is a perfect example in the quarantine.
They didn't know they were making that
No,
what it was going to be.
no.
They had a script. They were like, what should we make during a pandemic? I actually got to know those guys a little bit. One of the producers and the director, and they said that they told me that they would do this thing. They did this for like a year or more. They had to text each other three movie ideas with just a couple of sentences. Okay, here's my movie idea. Here's my movie idea. Here's my movie idea. Three different ones. So they would have to text each other three ideas a day each.
Wow.
So by the end of a year, they had hundreds of movie ideas. And I don't know if the Host was one of them, but they were working that muscle. And then when the pandemic happened, they thought, well, what could we make during a pandemic that would be cool and would be COVID friendly? Huh, and they wrote it in like 3 weeks. And then they started filming it and
Yeah.
they got all their friends
They all
to do
played.
it.
Yeah, they all played themselves in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
they
So
all
it
played
seems really real,
themselves.
doesn't it? And it
Yeah.
does, yeah.
Anyway, that was funny. That was a great movie. A lot of
Yeah.
people, that goes back to the marketing thing, have yet to hear of Host, and that's sad. So
Really?
hopefully, yeah, hopefully,
Everybody in our community has heard of it.
yeah, yeah.
There's nobody in our community that hasn't. But it's been on the best of lists in some New York magazines and also in some of the British magazines. I know when they talk about the well, now at the end of the year, this past month, people do their best of lists,
Best
so
of, yeah,
they're on a lot of best of lists. Yeah,
yeah. So hopefully the word will continue spreading. Anyway,
it's
yeah,
as
Barbara,
we're saying. Yeah.
yeah, the hour has just flown
Oh,
by. It
it
has
has. Oh my
really
God, I
flown
really
by.
enjoyed this.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for being here with us. It was my
Thank you for
honor.
asking me.
It was my honor to talk to you. Do you have any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Just stay safe.
Exactly.
And, we're going to be out of this very soon. It's hard on all of us. I have my days and my moments where I'm really depressed and other days where I'm not. So I know the days when I'm depressed, I know I'm going to have a better day. So I just want to say to everybody to hang in there. It's going to be over soon and we'll all get to hug one another again. And I look forward to that.
Excellent, excellent message. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. It's been an absolute treat. Barbara, thank you again. I will be with you guys again tomorrow. Until then, guys, on behalf of Barbara and myself, stay safe and stay walking. Good night.